Alrighty, welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington, serving online entrepreneurs around the US and the world. Welcome to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. I'm super excited to have my friend Eli Harrell here. Welcome, Eli.
I'm super happy to be here, Heather. Thanks.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a great conversation today. So Eli and I met in a podcasting group. What was it was like
Awarepreneurs, I think.
Awarepreneurs, but he had titled the group podcast with purpose, right? Or purpose-based podcast, impact-based podcasters. Yeah, exactly. And so Eli and I met inside of that group, and quickly I realized Eli and I needed to have a chat over here on the podcast and hear more about his journey, the work that he does with people in the world. I think we have some strong overlaps, and I think you're really going to enjoy hearing from Eli today. So for folks that don't know Eli is the co-founder and chief of purpose at Valhalla.team. He's also the host of Products with Purpose, which you'll hear more about today. He is a social entrepreneur, leader, and consummate problem solver who, through the painful process of building business after business, has become a map maker for founders and executive teams. In the early 2000s, he built and sold 2 contracting businesses in Atlanta before moving his family to Asia in 2014, where he has founded and advised for business in a number of industries. He is also part-time faculty and mentor of the MBA program at Southwestern University in Cebu, Philippines. Eli is the co-founder, as I mentioned, and chief of purpose officer at Valhalla.team, which is a company dedicated to amplifying the impact of entrepreneurs who are solving meaningful human problems via high-performing teams building products with purpose, right? There's his podcast name again, Products with Purpose. And so he's the host of a podcast called Products with Purpose, where he teases out the most valuable stories from people who are building products and businesses that are laser focused on solving meaningful problems on this planet or beyond. I love the or beyond. Like my brain is going crazy over that bit. Like I want to hear more. Welcome, Eli. So happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. Thank you for the intro.
Yeah, totally. So I love, we live in slightly different spaces, but obviously, we've gotten to know a little bit about each other, and I think there's a lot of overlap. And really, I think the way that you summed it up, which was, pretty simple and makes my brain happy, right, is that you're really focused on helping people build a life and business around purpose. And we were talking specifically about how some people end up maybe focusing on that in their business, but they are not building their lives around purpose, right? Can you talk to us a little bit about your own journey? Because it sounds like you've applied this in your own life, I'm sure, as like test experiment number 1. Talk to us a little bit about how you do that for yourself.
Yeah, so I think, well, all of us want to feel like we're living a meaningful life, right? I spent 10 to 15 years building businesses and having reasonable amount of success doing that before I really started asking some bigger questions around what is it that actually makes people happy. And long story short, I started discovering I think people really need progress and growth continually. We never ending progress and growth. And that led me on a journey to focus more on who I wanted to become rather than what I wanted to do. And then eventually realized I think humans are pretty much hardwired to we need to feel like we're contributing to something greater than us, right? So I think we all have this journey to go on where we need to build our frameworks and our foundations of what do we value most in the world. And we're always seeking meaning. I think one of the things I'm really excited about in what I see happening in the world right now is that a lot more people are making decisions of what they do. They're deciding on jobs or businesses based on purpose and meaning instead of just what does it pay me and what can I buy with it. So yeah, I think it's all just built on me shifting my priorities from, I just want freedom for myself, and I want, you have all these dreams that you think you want to achieve and that drives you, and gradually shifting to, I really want to help other people realize like life is much more powerful and exciting when we focus on who we want to become, answering that question, which is probably never ending, and why are we here, what do we want to create for the future, and thinking beyond even our own lifetimes, and thinking about what kind of a future are we creating for future generations. So yeah, I think those questions have led me down that path. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a very, very big question to try to answer concisely.
Right. It's a big conversation. Lots of pieces to that. I love your shift, like you highlighting, the question became more about who you wanted to become versus what you wanted to do. Right. I think that's a really powerful question to start from, is like, who is it, whether it's this year or beyond, that I want to become, right? Which can lead us in a very different direction than what is it that I want to do.
For sure. Yeah. And then eventually I think that leads us all to a path, if we go down it far enough, of discovering who we've always been. That's kind of a even deeper question, but deeper conversation.
Right. Well, it's so interesting. At the start of every year, I get a lot of, we'll just call it New Year activation energy, right? And it's been a little bit funny because for a couple of years now, and I think a lot of people can relate, it's like, oh, I've had to kind of tame myself a little, like, oh, I should really ease into this year, not necessarily like take a big leap. But I've been reading this book. One of the things that happens and is just a New Year thing for me is I really get a hankering to like clean out the old.
Yeah.
Physically, like not just do the exercise emotionally, mentally, right? But physically. And I was reading a book, I think, and I should share the name because it's a really fabulous book. I think it's called The Clutter Revolution.
It's definitely cathartic to let go of things.
Yeah, it is. Let me see if this is it. Clutter-free revolution. I'll tell you. Yes. Clutter-free revolution. And it's written by Evan Zislis. Sorry, Evan, if I just butchered your last name. Zislis. Anyways, he takes a very, like, really, for lack of a better summary, kind of a spiritual approach to this whole process of like cleaning out stuff. And his question, because I've done the Marie Kondo, I've done like some of the other stuff, like many parents, we tend to always have a clutter problem around here, right? I've got 2 kids. I've got a husband who feels differently about the level of cleanliness than I do. And he's not messy, but he just, what did I hear somebody say? The one with the strictest standards suffers the most, right?
I can relate with that.
And I think a lot of people can, in part because I work from home. So if there's a mess, like I'm in it. Well, working from home and taking care of our puppy and whatever. And he just gets to go to work all day. I say that, like, of course, there are downsides to that too. But this book, Clutter-Free Revolution, it doesn't ask some of the typical questions that you would see. And the only reason this is relevant is because it's really similar to your thought of does this item in my life support who I want to become? Right? Does it support how I'm spending my time right now in service to who I want to become? Right? So if who you want to become is somebody who spends more time with family or more meaningful time with your children, or maybe you want to do more art and creativity in your life, like, whatever it is. And he's like, if it doesn't, what's it doing? Right. Unless it's serving a really essential function. And, his backstory was that he went through a number of moves repeatedly as a child growing up, I think probably with a military parent. And so he got really good at getting rid of stuff and starting over, and realized the lesson early on, like if you need it, it will find you. We don't actually need all this stuff in our lives. And I think that parallels over really nicely into the conversation that I'm hoping that we're having, which is around in many ways, being more decisive and obtaining even greater clarity around what creates a purpose-based life and a purpose-based business, right? Mm. I think in many ways, often the answer is less.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I've directly experienced, well, when we moved from the US to Asia, to the Philippines, actually, 2014, I didn't think I was one of those Americans who owned too many things. And I'm like, oh my God, how did we get this much stuff? And even before that, I had really been kind of thinking about letting, like why do I have an emotional attachment to these things? And
yeah,
it's a fascinating thing. I think there's a lot you can learn when you explore why do we feel certain ways about physical items and not wanting to let them go. There's a lot to learn there. And yeah, I also think environment is a huge part of creating a purposeful, meaningful life where you're really happy with who you're able to show up as every day. Mm-hmm. Well, probably none of us are ever totally happy with who we show up as every day, but that you're
as close as possible.
Yeah, as much as possible, right? Environment really matters. And and so if you're looking around the place that you inhabit and it's not giving you the kind of energy, I think it's important to improve our environment as much as we can over time till we get to a place where like, yeah, that this place really supports the kind of person I want to show up as every day and the kind of energy and thinking that I want to have. And yeah.
Let's talk about this concept of energy, because I heard you mention it before. Like one of the things that you really try to help founders do, right, is like have the energy to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
Talk to us about your relationship to energy. Like, what does that mean to you?
There are a number of types of energy that we have, obviously. There's a really good book I read a while back called The Power of Full Engagement that talked about these 4 types of energy and how to make sure you're sustaining them and generating them. I think Brendan Burchard talks really well about generating energy as well. But I also there's a specific kind of conversation I've been having a lot lately that I think we need to have a lot more, which is that for people anywhere in this world right now who are either thinking about or have already decided to dedicate a large part of their time on this planet toward solving meaningful problems. So people who are, and then like I was telling you earlier, I'm really excited about the trend I see that a lot of people are making, more and more people are making decisions around what they do for work, whether it's a job or a business, rather than just thinking about the paycheck. They're thinking about the meaning and the purpose, and like, does this impact the planet or people in the direction I want to see things go? And does the culture make me feel good? So people are making decisions in different ways. However, I think it's extremely challenging to sustain the energy that we need toward the solutions we want to create in the world, or the improvements we want to see in the world, when we think the world is, can I say cuss words here? If we think the world's fucked, right, then then it gets really depressing. So I think we really need to be conscious that it matters what we think about where the world's headed. And if we believe that we are contributing to a tidal wave in the right direction, we'll be excited and optimistic. Like, we'll be able to sustain the energy, right? We'll be able to recruit more people to come to this cause. But if we think the tidal wave is coming in the wrong direction and we just drop in the bucket that we're trying to, it's like we think we can't make a difference. We think, and that is just depressing, and you can't sustain it. So Einstein said that the most important decision anyone can ever make is, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he really said this, whether to believe the universe is a hostile or a friendly place. And I think it's clearly both. It's clearly tons of both. And we'll never be able to convince someone that it's more of this or that. What? It's like, it's both, right? It's positive, negative, it's yin and yang. And we need to consciously tune in to the things that are happening in the world that make us excited, so that we realize, like, no, there's actually a ton of great things happening right now, unbelievably exciting things. I think we live in the most exciting period of time that's ever, on this planet, as far as we know. like AI coming online right now, there are so many things we can do now that we couldn't do before that are just, I mean, just exponentially amplifying our power and leveraging. We just have leveraged ability as humans, as individuals, to make so much difference in the right direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think, to sum that all up, supporting optimism by tuning into conversations with people who are doing things that make us excited. Like, oh my God, I can't believe that technology is happening. I can't believe how many people are, but who's talking about this stuff? We just figured out fusion. And where's that conversation? The news doesn't feed us these things. So the good stuff doesn't come to us but it doesn't come to us automatically. We have to intentionally, I think we have to intentionally tune in. So anybody out there that wants to change the world for the better, I think it's really important. We got to work out, we got to meditate. Like, there's a lot of things we need to do for ourselves to generate energy, but I think we also have to recognize we need to surround ourselves with people who are seeing, we gotta see the stuff that is exciting.
I want to respond to that really quick. I'm just gonna pause. Give me a second. I want my editor to notice this pause. I love what you said. When you emphasize with the desk, it comes through really loudly.
Oh,
so
sorry.
yeah, you're right. Just calm the hands down a little bit so that they're not tapping on the desk.
Okay,
we're good.
I've had guests do that too.
So I've done it, right? And I've done it where I didn't realize, like, I was wearing a bracelet that was like clickety clack, so I get it. No, your point is a really important one. And as a mom, I feel that like heavily, in a good way and in a bad way some days, because, like, let's take the news, for example, right? There've been some, and I've gone off the news entirely for, I don't know, a while, years now. It's a little bit hard at the start of the pandemic not to pay attention to stuff because there was so much going on, and even politically before that, right? It can be hard, especially as a person who cares a lot, to tune that stuff out. But for my mental health, for my literal physical health, and I think there's a lot of people that relate to this phase of where we're at, that we have to tune out what is getting blasted every day and really consciously seek out the golden nuggets of goodness that are out there and all around, but don't get amplified in the same way that all of the negative news does, Yeah. And I really think people are worn out on this. Like, I think people are getting to the point of being like, that old model doesn't work anymore. And I'm even seeing it, like, the other day. It was interesting because my husband had the TV on and I did see a little news clip that came on, and it was a local channel, but it was a very different kind of conversation that the newscaster was having. He was intentionally slowing down the conversation, clearly making space to have a conversation and a dialogue. And it wasn't just this, like, we're going to blast you with headlines and negativity. And I thought, isn't this interesting? It was a very noticeable change.
Nice.
Yeah. And I've also read other places that people are observing this, that the kind of the flash bang tactics of, like, whatever will catch people's attention in a negative way are just no longer so enticing to people. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we are able to, like, not only tune that stuff out, but influence in a way that the marketplace actually changes.
Right. Isn't it interesting how our lens is so malleable? Like, we have so much, we don't realize, I think most people just don't realize how much power as individuals we have to adjust the lens we're looking through. You're wearing these blue light blockers right now. It's like we can, it's like,
right. If you're listening, you're really missing out. You got to hop over to YouTube and check them out. They're atrocious. They're sending all of this,
I like them.
This terrible light back to Eli. Yeah, it's again, in service to my lowering cortisol levels. We're just doing everything.
So I talked about, what's going on in the world that we see as evidence of things moving in the direction we like. And then I also mentioned the news, and then you said, no, there's actually, I see evidence that there's something, maybe some little trend starting where the news is changing. Really? I wouldn't have expected you to say that, but that's pretty cool. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I definitely feel that younger generations are ahead of us in this regard. So, a lot of people have a lot of feelings about, you hear it, millennials and Gen X and Gen Z and blah, blah, blah. But I think our tolerance levels for BS is just shifting. I
Yeah.
just really think that tolerance is changing for certain things. And
Hmm.
a little bit like younger people, I think so often are more clear on their boundaries than maybe even, I mean, you are probably younger than me, but even than my generation of kids were, where, I think there was a certain amount of like, well, this is how it is, and this is what our parents say it is, and we just have to go along. It was
Hmm.
far less democratic than I feel like it is these days. It's a little bit like, I even look in my children, right? My little people, they come into this world with a really strong sense of democracy built into them.
Hmm.
They're not tolerating the same old stuff
It's because
from
it's
a
because they
tiny, tiny age.
it's because they see more. They grew up with just YouTube, right? I mean, there's so much more visibility on what's really, and the raw quantity of data that's coming at you ever since you're young, growing up in their generations. I
Mm.
think they have to build better filters or they'll go crazy. So it's like you got all this information, like what information that's coming at me is actually valuable, what's bullshit, like they know.
Mhm.
And they
Mhm.
can't be, I think they're way less gullible than any generation that's
Yes.
ever existed. And it's like they've been traveling the world their whole lives too. They've been all over the place, world
Totally.
travelers. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, I know. I traveled the world by reading, the different volumes of the encyclopedia. Like that's as far as I got out of
Yeah.
my, little home in Idaho while we lived there. But it really is very different. And to me, it's so refreshing. Like, do our little people have their challenges? Certainly. There are some things that I think as humans we're just unprepared for. Like, you want to talk about AI and technology and some of the shifts that are happening. For a long time, technology has evolved faster than humans' ability to really keep up with the changes in a way
Yeah.
that, causes some harm if we don't have clear boundaries around our lives, our use, our relationship to things.
Mm-hmm. Agree. Yeah.
So I'm curious because I'd love to know a little bit more about your personal journey, right? Share with us a little bit about your roots, how you got, how you came to be in this world of startups and technology and entrepreneurship and now products with purpose. I'd love to hear more about your journey into all of that.
Sure. I'll condense it as much as I can. So I grew up in the US. I was born in California, but I grew up in Metro Atlanta area and pretty untraditional, I would say, the way I grew up. I was the
Mhm.
eldest of 8 kids and we were all homeschooled and my parents were entrepreneurs. So I did not grow up on the education to employment, kind of
Yeah,
programming
path.
path. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that led me to become all of those, that scenario probably helped me become a self-teacher. Like I've just been somebody who's
Mm,
been, and maybe I was always just this way where I question things and I don't accept things until I understand why they are or the deeper underlying realities or principles below them. But yeah, so I think I've always been inquisitive and an innovator in the way I think, but
mhm.
also a self-teacher. So I deeply believe in constantly trying to learn new things and never believing that we know anything. It's like whatever you think you
Mm.
know, just keep it, hold it loosely and let new data in. Um, so yeah, like I said earlier, I spent a long time focusing on growing businesses with the motivation being I want freedom for my family. I want to be able to, travel and do all these things and like all the things we all want.
The freedom lifestyle. Yep.
Yeah. And then I once I kind of got a little bit more on a personal growth journey and started reading a lot more books and more deeply understanding myself and other people, I realized how many layers there are to understand in us and became really fascinated with just sort of studying the human experience itself.
Mm. I'm
And
curious, was
yeah,
there
go ahead.
anything in particular that launched you down the path of like more learning on the personal development side? right? You said once I became more interested.
There actually was an inflection point I remember. I mean, I think it's always a process, but there's one big inflection point I always point back to, which was after having built two businesses congruently in a partnership with people I grew up with and my brother, and we didn't know what we were doing. And it got so stressful that while we had reasonable amount of success, I was just totally burnt out, headaches, overweight, angry all the time. It was not good. And fortunately, I was able to exit those companies in a way that gave me some time to decompress a bit. But it was kind of right at the end of those companies where I realized that I was just getting angry at my brother all the time. It was ridiculous. And I'm like, why? He's not doing anything. What am I doing? And it was something as simple as, I don't really understand my own behavior and I don't like it. What's going on? What am I not understanding about why I'm acting this way? And it really came down to, I had narratives looping in my subconscious that I wasn't paying attention to, that were just feeding emotions that, I had these stories, and I had to build the skill of paying attention, using emotions as the alarm to make me, pay attention to the beliefs you've built by saying things over and over again. Like, my brother's an asshole. It's like whatever the thing is that I'm saying.
Pops up, totally.
I'm looking for evidence. Like, I understand these things now. I understand confirmation bias and how, when we believe something, we just only look for the data that supports it. We don't actually notice any opposing data unless we specifically look for it. So I think that was kind of an inflection point.
Well, it's a powerful one. I mean, even that point of, I love you saying paying attention to emotions as like the alarm bell, right? I remember early in my journey learning about, like, emotions don't just happen. They happen as a result of thinking a certain thing. It's your interpretation of an event that actually causes the emotion, right? Totally. So it's about like stepping backwards and saying, well, what was my interpretation of that event? And that learning I did right out of law school. I went actually to the seminar put on by the program on negotiations at Harvard. It was an advanced negotiations course. And they were talking just about our perception, right? The lens that we all have around, our own behavior versus how we perceive other people's behavior, and how in every instance we give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, right? And we tend not to, as humans, automatically give other people the benefit of the doubt, because we're experiencing the impact, not the originating emotion or the originating thought, their intentions behind it, right? So super powerful stuff. But I love that, because I think even no matter how far along you are on the scale of personal development, that paying attention to emotions as the alarm bell is still relevant. Yeah,
it's always
there.
Well, I mean, maybe there's a state of enlightenment we can get to where we don't need it anymore, but I have no idea about that.
No, I love it. That's a good share. So you became more interested in this personal development journey. You exited those, your other companies. What then?
So I was doing some work for a company that was opening markets in Asia, came over here to the Philippines for a month, really liked it. It's like a lot of reasons, but I decided to bring my kids and my family over here. I also wanted my kids to not just grow up in the US. I wanted them to have a more international lens, because I had lived in Japan when I was 19 for a couple of months. And I think that really changed me compared to so many people I grew up with. So anyway, fast forward, I've spent a number of years helping entrepreneurs here, starting businesses. And I've touched many different industries, from outsourcing to I've just, recruitment, a lot of different things, and outdoor advertising, cybersecurity. I've been really in a lot of different industries. And I realized that it had this kind of another, I would say, inflection point realization, where two big realizations. One is that the fundamental nature of business is that it's just a tool or a model that humans created for solving problems. That's all it is. It is not fundamentally designed to make people wealthy. So capitalism doesn't have to be about making people wealthy. It just has to be about free markets.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, where we're headed right now in stakeholder capitalism, I think is a way better version of it, which is another story. But basically just realizing business is such a great tool that we can use for solving any problem we want for any reason. And realizing that I wanted to be using business for making the world better for people. And those businesses also need to be built around people always. And that I needed to be partnered with people, both partners in business, so people that you partnership to start a business, partner with to start a business, but also clients. I only want to be working with people where I have alignment, and it took me a long time to kind of figure that out. Once I did, and then started deciding what to do about it, I built Valhalla with people who I knew I had that alignment with. They saw business the same way. They saw changes they wanted to make on the planet the same way, and that business can be a way of doing it, and that humans have to be put first for it to happen. And so we built Valhalla not because I'm into tech. My co-founder really is. He loves technology way more than I do. I love using it, and I love what it can do, but I'm not in love with it. So we built Valhalla because we see a lot of people on this planet who know how to solve problems. They're experts in something. Mm-hmm. And then they realize, okay, well, I could really change the world if I build a tech product that would scale what I know how to do, or scale the solution I've come up with. And the way that people usually go about building software, especially if they haven't done it before, it ends up being kind of a nightmare most of the time. So we have built out a better process to help purpose-driven founders to make sure they're building the right product for the impact they want to have. Mm-hmm. And that was just really driven. All of that comes from that desire to see business be more impactful, and just wanting to help other people improve the way that they, just amplifying the way they do that, because we're not experts. You go to solve a problem in climate, or in education, or in agri-tech, like whatever it is. You don't want to spend the vast majority of your time learning how to be an expert software
right,
product development, leader. That's really hard. So
yeah, no, that's a true story. I'm curious, I think everyone has their own path to like figuring out who their ideal clients are, who their ideal people are for partnering or working with or whatever. Mm-hmm. Did you get there because you worked with some of the wrong clients and wrong people along the way? Was that it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you think that's a necessary part for many people, necessary part of the journey?
I think there's a lot of mistakes I haven't made by listening to the mistakes other people made. So, reading books and watching, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube, you can deeply understand. You can't just, I don't think, hearing people say, well, do this, don't do that, that probably doesn't help us avoid making the same mistakes they did. But if you deeply understand the nuances of why they went down a certain path, and you relate with, oh shit, I'm on that path, and so no, I don't think we have to do it wrong. I don't. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of people, kind of going back to what we were saying about our kids. I think there's just a lot more information available now than there ever has been before. We can definitely tap into people that are doing it right. So for example, a lot of the communities that I'm in now are just full of these purpose-driven entrepreneurs, impact entrepreneurs. And one of the conversations I hear a lot is, how do you decide what your values are, like your values hierarchy? This is something I have done a lot. How do you choose what your clear priority of values in life are, so that you can make sure you're aligned with the people you partnership with? And if you haven't done that for yourself, good luck on getting it right, because you don't even know what yours are. So how can you find somebody that match them, right? So there are definitely methodologies of how to go about finding the right partners, and there's definitely people out there talking about it. So yeah, just recognizing it's a thing you need to do is good stuff.
Yeah, well, and I love even the mention of like, and I don't know if you've got your own values exercise that you walk people through, right? Because I know of some out in the marketplace, and I do think it's really important to go through those. And I think oftentimes we can skip a lot of the process. Sometimes I feel like it's actually easier to just look at your life right now and see what values are you expressing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Those are probably the ones that you hold dearest. And so for me, like, it's really clear what my values are and how they're being expressed. And then from there, I can say, okay, does that work for me? Is it working to express this particular value in this way? And, and there I think is a significant opportunity for coaching, whether it's from somebody like yourself or somebody else around, because there's also ways to like tie certain values together so that you're able to like bring in another way of expressing. Let's pretend somebody overworks, right? Because they're so dedicated to their business and their mission and supporting the right people, and they're not exercising enough, right? There are ways that you can manipulate your own mind, if you will, to actually begin expressing this value in a new way that looks like exercise, even if you haven't expressed it that way in the past, right?
Yeah.
But it is about recognizing like everything we do is actually tied to our values.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I think no, what you just said is really important. When I first started getting clear about what my top values would be, the ones I first chose were, I want to always be dedicated to leveraging my own potential, so growth and learning, so that I can help as many other people as possible. And then the second one is, I always want to remain open to new data and never think I'm rigidly know something. Those became really foundational, and was I living according to those to the level that I wanted to when I chose them? No, not quite. So they became like really a kind of a North Star, or a metric to like some kind of a measuring device to say, am I living into these values? Brene Brown talks about this, and I think her values exercise is good. But then fast forward 5 or 6 or I think 5 years, something like that, I decided to shift them a little bit, because I'm not going to say I've completely mastered those two, but they're so foundationally built into everything I do that I don't think they're really serving me to become a better version of myself to keep them as my top ones. So I chose contribution and kindness, because I want to be creating a lot more. I want to feel like I'm creating a lot more impact than just increasing impact exponentially. And I think kindness is something I want to be known for that I'm totally not known for. So, I think that's like a big challenge goal for me, or challenge value. It's like am I living into this value?
I love that. Well, and it is true. I think, all of us, first of all, we have limited time. We do, whether we like it or not, have limited energy, right? There are some limits around how many ways and how strongly we can express any of these values. And so I do like your perspective around like, look, you might really be leaning into a couple, and are those the ones that should be showing up, or does it look a little bit differently in your ideal scenario, right? And then how do you create your life or your work around that so that you can express those, right? And when I was building out even my mission statement for my business and the ways that we are distinguished from competitors, right? It was like, we build generosity into the business model, right? Nice. I want people to feel like they're having receiving a lot of generosity and, kindness, however you want to describe it, in the experience of working with us. Opposite the traditional legal model.
Love it. Yeah, that's
right.
Beautiful.
And so, yeah, I think but I love, and you mentioned the Brené Brown has a value exercise. There's one by Dr. John DeMartini, like whatever the flavor of the exercise, like just go do it, get clear on what really are your values and how are they being expressed, and does that work for you, right? I love it. And it's not something that is like a set it and forget it either.
No, it has to be something that you
check
yourself against, and hopefully also build, I think hopefully is the wrong word, necessarily. I think we also need a support group around us, whether it's a life partner or business partners or just your circle of closest supporters that know what those values are and will kind of have the guts to say, I'm not sure if that behavior or speech or choices is that living into the values you chose? I think we really need that, because sometimes we don't notice when we're heading off track.
Totally. Super, super important. So Eli, I would love to know, because I know it sounds like you work, at least through Valhalla, primarily with people in the tech space, right? Specifically, it sounds like lots of software. But You've got a podcast called Products with Purpose, and I think you probably bring on a wide variety of guests and also do coaching with founders, right? You have a variety of ways that you deliver your services. Do you want to share a little bit more about what you're up to currently? And so that people that are listening can either go, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
thank
me.
you.
Absolutely.
So the types of things we're talking about now in this conversation are things that I think are valuable. I see founders and change makers needing to talk about these things, and the podcast is called Products with Purpose, but usually I'm interviewing founders of purpose-driven tech companies, and the conversations just often go to things like supporting optimism. I think I might spin off another podcast about that in and of itself, because I think it's so important. So if those kind of conversations are interesting, and you might be interested to hear some of the really cool things that are happening out there, love to invite you to tune in. And also, we help people that are not necessarily tech companies, but have built a successful company that needs to build a tech product to scale. And we kind of help them think through a year before they start that, when they're starting it, how to get that going. So we also sometimes help, but we love working with people that are focused on impact. And if there's anyone out there that I could support, happy to have a conversation. LinkedIn, any way you want to connect is fine with me. I'm very open.
I love it. Well, and we will share, if you're listening, hop over and check out Eli and his links on the show notes page. Those can be found at legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. Go find Eli's episode. Eli, where are you on social media? And I always like to ask guests, doesn't matter what the answer is, but do you spend time on social media? Do you use social media to connect with people? And where do you prefer people find you, if so?
LinkedIn and Instagram. Instagram would be fine, but LinkedIn's best, I would say. I'm working to ramp up the content quality and quantity that I'm putting out. I don't spend a lot of time on social media other than creating content. And of course, you got to chat with people on Messenger and stuff, right?
Right.
But, yeah, I'm pretty open wherever you find me.
Okay. Fine. All right. Excellent. And then we will share your link over to your podcast, Products with Purpose. If you are listening, you want to pop over and make sure that you flag Eli's podcast. I'm looking forward to listening to some of those conversations myself, Eli. What final thoughts would you like to leave listeners with today?
I would recommend reading a book called Long Path by Ari Wallach, which is a pretty short read, but it really gets us thinking about what kind of ancestors we are being, and like just like thinking beyond. I really like zooming out, thinking about what elevation we're looking at things from, like, and there's zooming out beyond our own lifetimes. I think is a really powerful exercise to just think about, and I found that book to be really powerful. I would just really recommend it.
Oh, I love it. I've never had anybody say anything close to that. What kind of ancestors are we being? Such a thought-provoking question. Yeah. Eli, thank you. It's been such a joy to connect with you. I loved our conversation, and I really hope people will pop over and connect with you through your podcast, online through your website, or social media. Thank you again for being here today.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it too.